Okay, welcome back to the Tuesday show. So let's talk about what's been going on in Mortal Kombat,
Yeah,
which is a lot of
sure.
stuff.
So all these patches have been coming out. They messed up Tanya, like we mentioned. They kind of hurt Hellfire Scorpion,
Right.
other things
Devora
like
and
that.
stuff,
Yeah, and Devora, and so
So just to be upfront about it, I think it's too much myself.
yeah, yeah.
I find it hard to follow, and I've been playing that game a lot.
Mm-hmm,
I really do play that game a lot. I really like the game. So
mm-hmm.
this upcoming rant notwithstanding, please understand that I really like the game, and you should all try it out because it's really
Yeah,
fun.
yeah, yeah.
It's a legit fun game.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's funny because everyone always comes up to me and they're always like, "So what do you think of MKX, James?" Because they know you like it,
Yeah.
and I'm like, "I really like the game." They're like, "Really?" Like everyone's always shocked that I like this game. In fact, we even had people like tweet us like, "Why does James keep hating this game?" And I'm like, "I don't hate the game. I like the game." So I don't know, dude.
But it has been changing a lot. And as much as I play the game, it's been hard for me to follow. Like I said before, I don't really know what Katana does anymore. I know that she's had a lot more safety on moves, more range, like maybe more damage or something. I don't really, but like I put in a lot of time when the game was new to try to understand what all the characters' options are. And now hers are very different. And I find it difficult to convince myself that I should spend the time to go back and learn her.
Right.
Because I already did that.
You know what's kind of interesting though? So Evo has a July 8th cutoff date for patches. So tomorrow, done. Whatever version it is, that's it, right?
Yeah.
Katana's actually a really good character to learn for Evo.
You're right.
Because a lot of people are going to be in your position.
For sure.
Who're just going to think Katana was crap. And
Right.
then she's way better, and you find something super cheap and you don't tell anyone. She might be a really good character for Evo.
She might be. She might be. Anyway, so there's a big thread on Test Your Might where a lot of us were talking about patches, and the way it started off was that GGA Jeremiah wrote a very nice thread topic about whether patches in Injustice helped the game, and by the game he literally means the gameplay.
Right.
And I don't think there's any debate about that. I think Injustice ended up being much better as a game after the patches than before. I mean, they had a character with a 2-frame, full-screen, button press super that you could use. It did everything for you.
Right, yeah,
There were characters that had squadouche options,
yeah,
right? Anything they did was -2 or worse, and so you punished them and they just lost. That was it.
Right, so enough about Chun-Li and Third Strike.
Right. Oh, you're right. Yeah, you're right. So Superman was stupid. Fine. The game got a lot better. The question is that I think is more pressing, or that maybe I find more interesting, is whether the scene got better. And in my view, I feel like those patches really have had a negative impact, both in MK9 and in Injustice, and now in MKX. I know a lot of people personally who are not playing MKX as much or at all because of the changes, because of the frequency of changes. And so that's what we talked about in this thread. And Viscant had some very nice posts in there where he talked about, for example, how he feels like he's constantly in the early stages of a fighting game. He talked about how, he had like 5 steps or something, and the first step was like the basics, figure out the basics, and then the last step was you're a master of the game, and then there's all these intervening steps, and how he feels like he just can't get to the mastery stage, or even to like the 3rd or 4th stage, because he constantly has to go back. And even if his own character is not changed, in fact, his character, Sonya, changed a little bit, but she's very similar.
Yeah, but there was one change in particular that completely changed his game plan versus Devora, as he was talking about that he had this whiff dive kick kind of concept.
Exactly.
But now the whiff dive kick got extra recovery, so he can't do that same kind. So we've also talked about when we try to teach fighting games that it's all about range and distances and knowing your options. So that one particular distance, which he practiced all this stuff for and gained all this knowledge for on whiff dive kick, now has kind of become invalidated, which has caused him to have to relearn stuff.
Right, and he even talks about how maybe that matchup is better for him now than it was before. But that's a different question than it was the time he put in worth it.
Right.
Those are 2 different questions, and I think that it's hard to justify. So in that thread, at the same time, he's arguing this. A few other people are. I was. Haketh, Ian was also in there, and so each of us plays sort of different games, right? Like I'm definitely more of a traditional Street Fighter guy.
Yeah.
Viscant, Marvel.
Right.
Ian is more anime games.
Yeah.
And so and there are a couple other people in there too. So we're all talking, and it's kind of annoying because we sort of all get pigeonholed into Capcom players. I don't identify as a Capcom player. I don't know what that means.
Right. Yeah,
I feel like I don't have anything in common with Vampire Savior players, for example.
Right.
Nothing against that game. I'm
right.
not in
Yeah, absolutely. Dude, I love Vampire Savior. I'm not even in that. I don't even feel like I belong in that.
But players in Test Your Might, I think that they feel offended by us saying that we don't like the constant patching because it's an off-putter for us because we're used to games that are out and then they're out. They're out, and maybe they get updated after 6 months or a year, which happens. It's happened with a bunch of the Arxis games, and it happened with Street Fighter 4, and it's not uncommon. But there is certainly a period of time where you can just like investigate, and whatever you come up with is going to be real for some period of time. That's not a week.
Right.
So we're all used to that, and that's what we're expecting is to be able to put in a lot of deep time early. But that's not their expectation, and I don't mean to paint them as being wrong. In fact, I think that they're quite justified in that expectation. People there were saying things like, I don't get why it's such a big deal to understand that Dvora has a slightly different timing for her dash cancel stuff. It takes 5 minutes to learn. That's sort of true. I mean, just as a sort of absolute sense, I understand that it does take a different. And so I'm not using Dvora. I'm playing against her. Okay, I understand that, but that's such a surface level view, right? Because that changes all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, see, I was like, no.
It does.
Yeah,
no,
that's what I was thinking. I was like, wait a second. Like,
it does, but that's not what their expectation is. I think that it's much more of a surface level view, and at least early on. And again, I don't mean to say that that's a bad thing. I think it's perfectly understandable. If you have only played games in a scene where things do change from week to week,
right,
at most month to month for the first 6 months that a game is out, I think it makes total sense to look at changes as being just slight things.
Part of the meta that you have to deal with.
You have to deal with it, and one of the ways you can deal with it is by not putting in a lot of time that's going to be wasted. And that was a mistake that I made. I put in a lot of early time on some characters for things that are useless now. And it's frustrating to me, but they didn't put in that early time. And I mean, I found some broken stuff in MKX, like the option slips and stuff like that.
Right.
I wouldn't have put in that time if I had expected all the patching, which I should have, but I didn't. So now, when I found that stuff, I was like, let's go. Like, how are NRS play? How have they not found this stuff? Surely this was in MK9. They never found it. What are they doing?
Right.
Well, if you're not, if you're
accustomed
to things changing and to not investigating deeply until a game is out for a longer period of time, then it makes perfect sense to not investigate in the same sort of way that I'm used to when it comes to other games, and that Jay was used to, and that Ian was used to, and stuff like that. So it was a very interesting sort of lesson, I guess, as to how people in that dedicated scene work. And there are people there posting things like, I don't understand why I should have to spend all this time in training mode in the lab trying to figure out how to get around something. Legit, that was a real statement that somebody was like,
real quotes, real people.
Seriously, real quote. I don't remember it verbatim, but it was, I don't understand why I have to spend all this time in the lab trying to figure out ways to get around stuff. That seems like it's just super basic to me.
That's like fighting game 101.
But not. So it's like every other fighting game,
right?
But it's not. It's not for them, and they're justified because that's real for them. Like it will change.
Right.
They know that, and they're used to that.
I mean, the other
it's
thing,
a very different mindset.
The other thing that bothers me about the patches is like, okay, so Tanya's really good right now, right? But I mean, look, when Ultimate Marvel came out, who did everyone complain about? It was Wesker. They're like, this character's ridiculous, right? When Alpha 3 first came out, I cried ban X Dawson.
Right.
we've been wrong about these things constantly. Constantly. Who knows? Maybe all of a sudden you'll find out this ridiculous option select that's going to kill Tanya whether she teleports or not, or something like that, right?
Yeah.
And it's Jay mentioned this a little bit. Like sometimes you want to kind of let things stew so that you can figure out problems. You know what I mean? So that you can come up with solutions on how to beat it. Now, a lot of people are arguing that NRS had to nerf Tanya because CDO was boring and they didn't want that to happen at EVO. And I can understand that. I can understand that a little bit.
Yeah, because I feel like that seems like a very strange choice to me. Because that implies to me that you care about how other people are dealing with your game. That it matters to you whether other people are playing your game from other scenes and how they view your game.
Mm-hmm.
Well, a lot of people tried to play the game in good faith, and they really were interested, and they wanted to get good at it.
Right.
And the patches turned them off.
Right.
And yet that is a reality that seems to just sort of go against if they care about having people in the scene or not put off by something in the game. That seems incongruous to me with the idea that they're cool with constant patching.
Yeah.
Because they both will turn people off.
But it seems like
you're cool with one of them.
They're trying this weird balance between catering to the casual crew, which, like I said, I think a lot of the patches are for, because I think that they're probably taking a lot of online data and figuring out, like, once people started learning about Johnny Fisticuffs.
Could be.
If you don't know how to fight fisticuffs, you're just going to die by chip, and you're like, this is stupid, whatever, so you got to fix something like that, right? So it's like they're trying to appeal to the casual and the hardcore at the same time, and yeah, I think it is kind of getting them confused or something. Like their message is not quite clear. That's
how it seems to me, and I understand. That's not even to say that I think that all the patches are bad. To go back to how we're talking about at the start, Injustice definitely ended up as a better game after the patching. And maybe that'll be the case for MKX. Some of the changes that they've gotten rid of are like Kung Lao EX Orbit, the hat thing, is not plus 24 anymore. Okay, fine. But it's just that there have been so many of these changes, and not all of them have been obvious solutions to things. I don't know why Kano EX Up Ball is -5. I don't understand that change. And it's especially strange when you understand that it's not -5. It's still unsafe if the opponent is crouch blocking or at a certain distance, or even if they block crouching right before EX Up Ball, or if they crouch block with enough time in advance that they're in full blocking animation, because those are two different animations.
Okay.
So there are all these situations where it won't be -5 anyway.
Right.
So it's just a very confusing change.
Yeah.
I don't know, but that's just an example. So anyway, the point is, maybe the game will end up better. It's just that all the patches over so many different patches sort of add up to be more of an impediment, I think, to people continuing to play the game than if they just put out a patch, like maybe once a month. Maybe they said in advance, hey, here's the patch date.
Right.
These are the kinds of things that we're going to try to patch out. If you find one, let us know.
Right.
We'll take it out. We will stop patching this long before Evo or whatever. Just some schedule, some timing, some sort of reasoning would be fantastic.
Like, I totally appreciate that they're trying to patch the game to make it fair or balanced or whatever like that. But just like you said, if they took all the patches that have gone into the game, there have been 4 or 5 patches so far, right? It's terrible that I can't even count.
You're right.
How many patches? That's how bad it is. But if they took all those changes and saved them, and then like maybe after Evo was like, here's the changes. Like everyone would be like, sick, let's go.
Sure, we've learned some stuff.
Right, we figured it out. We figured out a lot of stuff about this game, and they might even have some better information. Like some of the characters, like those Kenshi variants and stuff like that, got buffed really fast, and then they got nerfed.
Yeah.
Because no one was playing him, and so maybe they didn't think that he was that good.
Dude, what was funny was that I remember before Kenshi got buffed, some people were thinking that actually Kenshi was pretty good.
Right,
but people just weren't using him right. That's the kind of thing that happens. I mean, you brought up Wesker. Perfect example. At the other end of things, Viscant mentioned Dudley, who everybody thought was terrible in Street Fighter 4 in AE 2012. I mean, I did.
Hey, let me tell you
something. But then Smug showed us that we were all wrong.
So Viscount brought up Dudley, right? Guess who also talked about Wesker not being a good character in Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3?
It was Viscant.
Viscant. So how do you argue against this guy? He is like seriously one of the smartest people that I know.
He is. He's a very smart guy. He figures out the gameplay, and he even says this. He was like, one of my strengths is that I figure out the gameplay faster than almost everybody. He won Marvel 3 because he figured that game out faster.
Yeah.
That was like 80% of the reason.
Right. He was like, you know what? I can get away with this Wesker Hager mix-up.
Yeah.
I can boil everybody's game down to dealing with this and build up Phoenix. And he won.
And he won. Right.
So,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, from the
Iceman and Mega Man were both amazing in MVC2 when it first came out.
Right.
Because Iceman didn't take chip.
Right.
And Mega Man, the soccer ball was too annoying.
Right.
Like, you couldn't deal with that. It was like, oh my god, how do you stop this?
Right.
Where are they now?
Right. Yeah. That always happens. But that's long-term stuff. And I don't think that dedicated NRS players really know what that's like. To be perfectly frank, I mean, even when it comes to MK9, that game was played at a high level for like 3 years. Right. Just not nothing. Maybe 4 years, something like that. Not nothing. But a game after 5 years is not the same as it is after 3 years. I mean, when I picked up Third Strike, when I was in year 3, I feel like I was so much worse than I was after year 5 or whatever, year 6. Right. It's a noticeable difference, really. Right. And I'm sure you felt the same with the other games that you played.
I mean, here's like my ST Cami is way better now than it was during the prime of my fighting.
Of course.
Like I actually know way more about Cami now.
Of course.
Than I did back then.
That's how it goes.
And another thing too, though, but I mean, we've talked about this before. So when MVC2 first came out, when CBS2 first came out, it took us 10 years like to really dig deep into a game, right?
Right.
Now that we're all smarter and we break games better and stuff like that, so a game like Ultimate Marvel or Ultra Street Fighter 4 isn't going to last as long as some of those games because, we're going to discover we're going to get to the apex a lot quicker than a lot of the other games, right? So the interesting thing, what you mentioned about NRS games, like, so we figure stuff out after 5 years, like in Ultra Street Fighter 4. But if NRS is not digging their heels into the games as much as we are, maybe their 3 years is kind of like that 3 years was back in our CBS2 MVC2 days. So maybe they haven't. Maybe that's why it's kind of.
I definitely think that that's true for MK9.
Yeah.
When it comes to MKX, I do think that it's progressed a lot faster. That said, I think a big part of that. I'm not going to take too much credit here, but at least a reasonable part of that is the influx of other people from other scenes trying to give it a go. And just because having more people means that you have more brains and you find things out faster. That's a huge part of why every other game moves faster now. Right. And it's the same thing for MKX. But that's only at the start. And a lot of those people are getting dissuaded from continuing to play, and I wonder whether that pace will slow down a little bit just because there are fewer players. And nothing against MKX players. I think some of them are really talented. Oh, yeah, and that they could do very well in whatever game they wanted to play.
And they do.
And some of them do.
They do, in fact.
And some of them do. But, right, definitely. But, I don't know. That's sort of what I wonder.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, and I feel like the biggest tragedy of this whole NRS patch thing is that moves that were like purposely designed not to work, like the ice clone, are not going to get patched. Like they were designed not to work. Can you believe that? And they're not going to get patched.
They were built to not work.
And that's you just got to suck it up. You got to suck it up, and that's it. You just got to accept that it's not going to work. You just have to live with it.
But seriously, speaking from his perspective, what I imagine his perspective is maybe. He expects that things change.
Right.
And so why not try to lobby for things to change? Because you know that lots of things will change. Why not this one?
Right. Yeah,
why not this
that's
one?
True.
And he and other NRS players will phrase things in a way that I had rarely thought of, which is that things don't work as designed. I'd rarely thought of that. It's maybe only a few exceptions, but for the most part, when I see that something doesn't work, I just think, that's too bad, or maybe the hitbox doesn't cover where I thought it did, or whatever. But for example, Jax's forward 2, right? This really good little rush punch.
Yeah.
There is this range where it doesn't really work that well, and it's not like sometimes it's just a high rather than a mid. And people will talk about that as being not working how it's supposed to, rather than the hitbox isn't quite where I thought it was.
Right.
Which is just a different mindset, and I think it makes sense when you think about how the games get patched and how NRS does things. I think that's a justified viewpoint. It's just very different from what I'm more accustomed to.
Speaking of ST, I use Cammy. Let me tell you, my anti-fireball move doesn't work the way it was designed.
Right.
And it's never worked. And so, so it just didn't even become an option. It's like spin knuckle, whatever.
Yeah.
This move is going to be ass for the rest of its life, whatever.
Right.
It doesn't do what it was supposed to do.
Like
when
SF4 Geef came out, and I realized that jab green hand or that no green hands really nullify fireballs well, I didn't really think this move doesn't work how it's supposed to. I should lobby Capcom to make changes.
I did. I actually wanted them to make it anti-fireball again, but,
it just wasn't what I thought it was going to be, and that's fine. I figured other things out for it, and there were plenty of other things.
Exactly. So
I don't know. It's a very different mindset that I think is reasonable in the context of the games that it comes from, but that I think is unfortunate because it helps keep that community smaller than I think that it should be. That game is so fun, and I just think that a lot of people are not going to end up trying it for whatever number of reasons, but one of those reasons is that people are put off by the common patch, by the frequent patching.
We know too many people who are like, I just don't even want to bother playing it because they're patching it too much.
Yeah, that's a real thing, right? I mean, that was something that was going on in a thread where people were like, I'm not sure if this is real, or is it people really dropping it because of the patching? They're going to drop it anyway, because that's what they did with MK9 and Injustice. But that's such a
the common thread is that they were patched,
right? Because those players have stuck with lots of other games,
right?
I don't know. It's just a different mindset, and it was very illuminating. But it was. I really hope that Street Fighter V doesn't do the constant patching, because I like having a chance to figure things out. For example, I felt honestly a little bit cheated when Tanya was nerfed, because as Goro, I thought that I went in training mode one day and I was like, here's some cool ideas that I want to try next time I fight a Tanya. And I never had a chance to try them because I was away, and then by the time I got back, she was different, and nobody's going to do teleport into me anymore like they were before. And so my potential anti-airs or my movement around them, which is really what I was going to do, they don't matter anymore. Like what I was going to do is I was just always going to do the chest bump, the back forward two, because that if she does it on the ground, instant air, cool, I anti-air. If she does it higher up, great, I'm underneath and I'm away. I wanted to try it out, but there's no sense in doing that anymore. So I feel like I
lost a lot of time.
Like I lost some time, and like I am just a little bit cheated in the strategy. Like I wanted to try it out.
You wanted to see if you could overcome it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the things that Capcom players, look, MVC2 survived for so long, right? And it's seriously one of the most broken games out there, right? The top tier is so much better than the bottom tier. But that's one of the reasons why it's so hyped, because people enjoy watching the mighty fall, basically. And so when you see someone like Clockwork doing it with Strider Doom, that kind of thing, it's just that people get excited about trying to beat the best characters in the game. So
sure, and that exists in every game.
Now, obviously, the landscape has changed drastically. It's all about money, and we've got these tournament stuff. So yes, I do want it to be patched. I want to.
I'm not against patching.
Not a patch. Yeah. I mean, I want it to be balanced for sure. So I'm okay with patches, but yeah, the frequency is a problem.
Right.
Because it's obvious that other fighting game players can handle when like a yearly patch, or they can probably even handle a 6 months patch. Every 6 months you patch. Every 6 months you patch. We can all process that, and it feels like the proper season. You know what I mean? Like, so for Street Fighter V, I would plan it so that I would patch in July, right after EVO, based on EVO, and then patch after Capcom Cup. Like, they have a perfect schedule for patching now.
That makes a lot of sense.
So basically, as soon as EVO's done, time to study up on the new version for Capcom Cup. Then that's done, study up on the new version for next EVO, etc.
That makes sense to me.
So if people can do stuff like that, I think that's really important. So.
Yeah. One of the other things is just that it's a very insular scene, and it's That's so I often felt in that thread like people thought that they were being attacked when we were saying things like
by the Capcom players.
By the Capcom players, exactly right.
Mm-hmm.
Even when one of them was a guy who doesn't play Capcom games at all. But oftentimes it felt like they were being attacked. I think that's unfortunate because it's certainly not what we were intending to do. We just wanted to have sort of an airing out of why we think that some people are no longer playing as much as they otherwise would be. And I think that a great example of this is Predator. So Predator is out now.
Right.
You can play him. I'm not interested in figuring him out. And that makes me sad. Because before, I spent so much time figuring all the cool characters out. I think he's cool. I think he has some cool tricks. But I'm not going to be the one to find them. You know? Because I don't want to put in the time with the chance, or maybe even the likelihood, that something about him gets changed. And that if I find something sick, that it's going to be gone in a week. I just don't want to spend my time like that. So if somebody else does it, then that's great, and I'll use it. But I feel myself being in sort of the same mindset that a lot of the players in NRS have, which is just that I'll look at the character and I'll sort of understand him at the surface, exactly, and I'm not going to look for those deep systems and the sort of deep spacing. I'm not going to do that because that's inefficient. It's not a good use of my time, unfortunately. Yeah, that's my view.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's totally right. So
I think that's so sad. I really do. I really do.
Yeah.
I spent so much time in trading mode with that game.
One thing I will say though, I mean, to be fair, like I don't want to make it sound like we're talking crap about the NRS community and really singling them out, because I mean, actually, to be honest, a lot of scenes are like this. Like I know, yeah. So I know, for example, like when Guilty Gear Xrd came out, like just without even being prompted, like a lot of people were like making fun of me for wanting to try to commentate the game because I'm a Capcom player.
Right.
I've never played Guilty Gear before, and I'm like trying to invade Guilty Gear.
Right, which is nonsense.
Dude, I even said on stream yesterday, like me and my friend Eric, who I played Guilty Gear with, I would go to his place, get there at like 1 p.m. or 2 p.m., and we would play Guilty Gear until like 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. Like 12 hours straight. To the point that when we were done, like it hurt to get up. Right, you know that feeling? Sure. Yeah. Sure. I mean, that's how much we used to play Guilty Gear all the time. I love that game, but again, it's just that whole thing. I'm not part of the anime community. I'm not part of the Guilty Gear community.
You're right.
And like Max, right? How many?
Max
every scene gets dumps on Max for invading their scene.
You're right. Yeah.
All right. The Mortal Kombat scene's done it. The only scene that I guess he fits naturally in is the KI scene. I guess I don't even know, but yeah. Yeah.
No. It's definitely good to point that out, and I know that a lot of Street Fighter players and Marvel players and so forth have crapped on MK and Injustice and stuff.
Yeah.
That's definitely real too. There's certainly both sides, but I feel like it's harder for a player to get into an NRS game because it takes a different mindset in the gameplay. It's not just in the scene itself. It's that understanding how to learn the game is just different because of how the patching works. It has to change if you're going to be reasonable about it.
Yeah. So I mean, at this point, like, I feel lucky because I use Ferritor and he hasn't been changed much at all.
Yeah, you should.
They haven't been changed much at all. So
you should feel lucky.
Super fortunate right now.
Yeah. I mean, when it comes to people using multiple characters, I thought that in MKX that would be inefficient because players were too good, and the scene had a lot of new players, and players were too good, and you couldn't get by with like MK9 or Injustice of having a bunch of different characters because the level of competition's higher than it was before. Right. And so I thought that it would be more efficient to stick with one character, but in retrospect, it's not, and they're right because they never know when a character is going to change. Like DJT has a bunch of characters, in part because if one of them gets nerfed, he's not asked out. He can still compete and still win because he has these other characters. And even if he's playing them at a level that's more surface and not like he knows every situation, over time that seems like it's more efficient for winning tournaments.
Well, do you have anything else that you wanted to say about the MKX stuff?
I'm just sad about it.
Yeah, I know. Because look, this is what I've said to a lot of people, right? I like MKX. I think they have a lot of great ideas. I have so much trouble recommending it to people. Like, I can't honestly, with good faith, go to people like, you should play this game. Because then they have to deal with this patching and stuff. It has nothing to do with the game. It has to do with everything outside of the game.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, so it's like frustrating to me.
It is
because I want to be like, no, dude, trust me, you guys are wrong. This game is legit.
Yeah.
This game is legit. Because I have friends all over the place who are like those completely anti-MKX
I know
people, you know, so I'm just talking to them and I'm like, dude, this game is legit. It's actually fun. But like I can't tell them to go play it because it's just like there's just all these things around about it, and you're right, it makes me sad.
Yeah,
it legitimately
it's a big missed opportunity.
So,
frustrating.
It's frustrating.
Yeah.
Man.
Oh man, shoutouts to Meltdowns.
I've never seen it. I only saw the one from today, so yeah.
Well, I really hope that they have fewer patches. But more than that, I hope that they announce that they'll have fewer patches.
Right.
Because if it ends up in retrospect that this is, hey, maybe they put out the last patch that they're going to put out ever. Maybe that's it. But you have no idea if that's true because they haven't said anything. And I just want certainty. And again, I'm not against patching in general. It's no rule of mine.
Yeah.
I just want the chance to try to figure things out on my own.
Right.
B, some certainty as to whether and when and why patches will happen.
Mm-hmm.
That's like the entirety of my position.
Yeah.
Which I feel is super reasonable.
Yeah,
but
absolutely,
I don't know.
Absolutely. So, yeah. Okay.
I mean, honestly, Ice Clone is a really good example of a move that is awesome. It's really good, but it doesn't work in the ways that you expect if you look at it without like trying all of the different things.
Mm-hmm.
If you look, it makes total sense to try to do the little forward 4-2 little step he does into Ice Clone, or always to have an Ice Clone on screen. That makes a lot of sense, but it might not be the most efficient way to use it long term, considering how it actually is. But if you know and expect that things will change, then I think it's reasonable to sort of continue to use it in that way and hope that things do change.
Yeah, I mean, that's just the thing. Is like, I mean, like for example, we were just talking about this yesterday. Me and Choy Sauce, we're talking about Venom. So you can plant all these cue balls everywhere like that. There's all these different formations, so many different ways to hit the cue balls so they bounce off of each other, controlling space in all these different ways. And that's not even how you play them. But when you look at it, that's obviously how you think that you should play him. It's like plant these cue balls, boom, 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 balls everywhere, you can't get it past them, or whatever like that. That's not how you play him, right? And so what looks like the obvious thing at first is sometimes not how it's supposed to go, but that's fine. That's the nature of fighting games. Like I said, one of my favorite things is learning how to use moves in ways that they weren't meant to be used. Like, I actually really enjoy that. My favorite is using moves for travel.
Sure.
Like, that's actually always, like, one of my favorite things, like, when people use moves. Like, I remember this even happened in Champion Edition. So what a lot of people would do is just, like, do Bison's re-dizzy combo. So it was like scissor kick, low strong stand forward, they'd be dizzy. And then most people would slide over to get back over there and charge again. And then one time I saw a friend of mine do that in the scissor kick to get into position. I don't know what it was about that, but I just thought it was so cool to see him use the scissor kick to get into position. And I was just like, yeah.
I remember in Third Strike, my Q always got rushed down and I got cornered and the opponent would just keep jumping at me and my anti-airs suck and it was just parry or not. And I was like, this really sucks. Frustrating situation. And so one day I did dash punch to just get out of the corner when they jumped. And in retrospect, that sounds super obvious. But it took me a while and there was nobody else playing Q really, so I had to figure it out. And once I did, things changed.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
absolutely.
But was not an obvious way for me, at least, to use the move.
Right. Did you actually get?
It's a very fun game.
So there's two other topics that I kind of want to touch on. So first of all, just out of curiosity, did you actually get a chance to play in the Splatfest?
Sort of. I just had really bad connections for some reason, and I tried to play it 3 times, and each time it disconnected only a minute in, so I never really got to do it.
Do you know who won between dogs and cats?
The dogs.
The dogs won? Oh, good stuff, good stuff.
Yeah. But you know what it was? Apparently, part of the results were due to popularity, not just effectiveness of the team.
Oh, really?
But popularity. And the cats actually did better, like per capita. Per capita. But the dogs had way more people, so they won.
Oh, I see. Gotcha. Right,
That's
right.
basically
So
it.
by sheer volume, they were
Yeah.
able to do better. Right. Okay. Fair enough. Okay.
Did you?
No, I didn't get a chance to play. At all. So yeah.
And then there's also a new gun coming out, 96 gal Deco, that has the splash wall and also the Kraken as the super move.
What? Really?
Yeah.
That sounds ridiculous.
It does sound ridiculous.
Yeah.
I think the gun itself is not as great as some, but that's maybe a downside I'd be willing to put up with. We'll see.
Okay.
We'll try it out.
Well, and then the last topic I wanted to talk about, just wanted to briefly mention this, but was it Steve Austin gave a shout out to K-Brad on his podcast.
Yeah.
So K-Brad, we talked about this last week, had that intro and it got really popular and viral. And apparently Steve Austin has indeed seen it and gave him a shout out and CEO a shout out on his podcast.
That is pretty cool.
That is sick.
Going back to the discussion from last week about how if tournaments are willing to invest in cool infrastructure and players are willing to do cool things if those are there, here you go.
And,
that's awesome.
And maybe, he'll look into the fighting game community a little more.
Maybe, or maybe like 2% of the people who listen to his podcast will look into it. And maybe that 2% is like 10,000 people. I have no idea what the numbers are. But whatever it is, it's going to be relevant compared to the fighting game community size.
Exactly. And then people will look it up. And who knows, like I said, maybe if Steve Austin watches, it's like, this is really cool. Hey, guys, these guys are trying to become the WWE of esports. We should look into this. And, dude, you never know what can happen from that. So, I mean, I'm not saying anything will, but, most of the time, things getting to those places happen because of weird things like that. So, you can't discount the weird, the little small one-offs and stuff like that.
Man.
So.
I hear that.
There you go. 200,000 people listen to Steve Austin.
Really?
Steve Austin has like 40 million followers. No, he doesn't have that many, but. So, hey, Sagatine, I'm sorry, our microphones are broken right now, dude. So the literally, remember that mic that when we pounded on the table, it would like break your ears like that? It's not doing that right because some of my settings got messed up. So yeah, the microphones are ass right now, and I apologize about that. So there you go.
Oh man, Broly got figure for it in real life. That's a good joke, but I feel bad.
Oh man. Broly's the best, dude. Broly's the best.
Well, so Sunday we are planning to have a pre-Evo show. I mentioned this before, but just to bring it up again, we'll put out more concrete details on the time and so forth later on, but expect it Sunday afternoon, evening, Pacific time. We will talk about what to do at Evo. We talk about that each year. We'll talk about the indie game showcase. We'll talk about
all the stories.
Players to watch.
Try to go through the pools.
We'll try to do that for each game, and for games that we don't know much about, we'll try to get guests on, or at least gather information in some other way, so that we can be helpful when it comes to each of the games.
Right. So that'll be on Sunday. You're heading to Vegas on Tuesday, right?
Correct.
So on Monday, I don't know, we may try to do something, but I'm not sure if we'll actually get around to it. We'll give you guys more details and stuff. So.
And then finally, if anybody is in Southern California and is not going to be at Evo early, I do recommend checking out the Azusa City Council meeting again, which will be on next Wednesday, right before Evo, to try to help Super Arcade get its permit for the arcade. There is going to be another meeting. Mike Watson has called for people who are willing to speak and who are willing to show up and just be in the audience. Very important if you do to have to be well prepared, to be presentable. You don't have to be in a suit or whatever, but dress nicely, look nice.
Right. Well, also another thing too is definitely go to the Super Dojo Twitter. Yeah. He did put out a tweet that said that if you do plan on showing up, they're doing a meeting beforehand to discuss things. He just wants to make sure that everybody's on the same page and all this other stuff. So definitely check that out. That's at Super Dojo.
Yeah, definitely. And again, if you want to do a speech or write something and you want somebody to look it over to see whether you need any editing or whatever, I'm happy to do it. You can send it to us at ultrachentv@gmail.com. I'll take a look.
All right, cool. Well, thanks for tuning in, everybody. Again, Sunday, check us out there and just get hyped for Evo. So,
Evo's coming soon.
yeah, but this weekend, Curleh Mustache, check that out. So, ifcyipes.com.
All right.
Cool.
Don't kick me out, NRS scene. I like you. Cool. Cool. I just wish the game was different. But, it's fun. It's fun.
All right, guys.
It's all good.
Peace out.
All right, bye.
And you can still hear us because I don't know how to turn off the mic.